Make some noise for your DJ in the place, the Scorpio.
Hello, this is Raw, the 90s Rave Podcast with me, Tom Latcham. Welcome to the latest episode. So far on Raw, we've largely chatted to acid house, jungle and hardcore artists, but if you've been following us from the start, you'll know that we are aiming to interview the full range of 90s rave genres, including harder styles, and we've in fact been asked, when's our first harder style DJ going to come? Well, now, they don't come much harder than today's guest. He's a Helter Skelter Technodrome resident and legend, hailing from the southwest of England, where they all seem to be slightly on the nuttier side of rave music. This man is a rave legend who's shaped hardcore music over the past 25 years. He's made my ears ring on a number of occasions at some of the most banging nights I've ever been to. It's DJ Scorpio.
Hi, Tom.
Hello, Mr. Scorpio. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you very much. So as I said in the intro, you are a slightly different kettle of fish to all of our previous guests. They've all tended to be happy hardcore, I suppose, or jungle DJs and artists or MCs. How do you view the sort of harder music you play in relation to that explosion of rave music back in the 1990s when this podcast refers to, really?
I think what myself and my other peers in the genre I play would say really we evolved from the very early part of the 90s music scene. We didn't, we didn't really have the hardcore techno side of things there at the beginning. It was something that evolved from that beginning, really. It was suddenly you started hearing a few tunes that were a bit more four to the floor than a break beat, and on big sound systems. A straight 4/4 kick drum can sound beautiful, really. So it was from there. It seemed to grow out of it. You know, we all took our influences from all of it, from acid house, Belgian new beat, UK break beats, bit of jungle. It was, you took the elements that you like and expanded on it, really, I would say.
And you often played in those the techno rooms, the sweatboxes as they're known, the dingier, darker sort of clammier rooms. How important a part of the 90s rave scene were those rooms? Because some people will have gone to the smaller events that you've played at, but a lot will only really have experienced hardcore techno and you and your sets in those rooms and in those little forays into those sweatboxes.
Yeah, well... as to quote my friend Ribsy, is the party's in the back room. So it was a lot more grungier in the back room. You could play. You could play what you wanted. Obviously, they've still got to enjoy it, but you could play what you wanted, and you could be a bit more adventurous, should one say, rather than sometimes even when you got bookings in the main room, you did think heavily about how you would play it compared to your audience in the sweat boxes, as you say. But some of the best parties I've had have been small venues. It's not small venues, big sound systems, very little lighting, great sound system. It's good enough, really, as long as you got the sound system. Really, our music depends on it, although we did get the bum end of the deal on a few occasions. So.
Yeah. Oh, and I've been in a few rooms where you're like, oh dear, they really haven't paid much attention to this. And we'll explore that a little bit later on in the podcast, whether there was a feeling at some of those bigger raves it was maybe a bit of an afterthought. But certainly it wasn't for those people who loved bouncing away with the bouncy floors. And, are we going to go through the floor here? People like that.
It's happened.
Has it?
Well, nearly. There was one of the scouts, I remember, the security came running up. They'd stopped any more people coming into the sweat box, and they'd stopped anyone coming up. And then the security guards actually ran over to the decks and went, "You're going to have to calm it down a bit. The ceiling tiles are falling off in the foyer on top of people." So, yeah, nearly. Not
so
quite.
What did you do? Did you crank it? Did you crank it up?
No, just leave it where it is. Really, it's like it's. You don't turn it down. Sometimes you might make the effort to look like you've done something, but very rarely do.
So
you're trying to rinse every ounce out the sound system as it was on a lot of occasions, anyway.
So hardcore tended to be a sort of happy, bouncy vibe, and jungle tended to be a moody, rolling vibe. What were the techno rooms about in your mind?
Everything. the beauty of the techno room where they were so diverse. You could go from, I think my first ever Skelter, I followed Dave Angel. For me, that was a bit of a blessing because it made what I play stand out so much more for following Dave. But with the whole beauty of the room was it would flow. There would be, from Mark and Mick playing techno and trance, myself, Clarky, producer, the like playing the more party sort of hardcore with, it was harder and faster, but then you had your other more extremes with sort of Lofty, H and Music Maker would probably crank it to another level. So, you had, there were rarely, you did get some people who were probably at one end of the scale listening to another, but generally, people were I think were more accepting in the techno room of a wider range of music. So, it was a great place, great, innovating, so many like-minded people getting together and just, you probably hear me say more than once today, it's all about the party, and those rooms were about a party. Yeah, so.
This is DJ Scorpio. We're here on the 90s Rave Podcast. If you want to get in touch with us, hello@the90sravepodcast.co.uk. Check out all our social media channels, and we're also filmed all on YouTube now. So if you are listening to this on audio, get yourself over to YouTube because you can watch it live. Well, not live, but you can watch it in HD, and also there's plenty more besides. But before we move into more about the music, Mr. Scorpio, I want to do a quick get-to-know-you round, just to find out a little bit more about you and what makes you tick as a person. So we'll do a quick fire, quick answers. What's your full name, Scorpio?
For tax purposes, no, Simon Mitchell.
Simon Mitchell. How old are you, Si?
I am now a sprightly 54 years old now. So.
54, there you go. And where did you grow up?
I grew up in London as a kid, not for long enough, moved to the southwest. Still as a kid, finished secondary school. So I've pretty much been a Southwest boy by heart, though, some people may term you as a grockle even still. So
yeah, those old habits die hard in the Southwest. And whereabouts do you live now?
I live in Paynton, which is right next to Torquay. So
okay. What's your relationship status?
My relationship status is in a relationship. I'm no longer married. I've got a new partner. So
okay.
Yeah.
Are you a dad? Have you got any children?
I've got two kids, one of each. The daughter's 19 and my son's 14, nearly 15. So
do they like your music?
No. Well, I'd say that. No, they do. But, I think I took, my son was 10 when I took him to the Prodigy. He's a bit more into his drill and grime now and keeps going, oh, listen to this, Dad. And I'm like, don't really like lyrics, son. I'm more for... I wouldn't push my, music's very personal to me, and I think it should be to everyone. It's not you shouldn't force down. I used to like watching him in the car when kick drums drop and all that, and just watch for reactions. And it's good. They both love music. Good. Both, but
and what's your, if you had to pick a favourite style of music that isn't the music that you play, what would it be?
Well, I've said that. I'm a bit of a
just rave
fanboy. Yeah, I'm a Prodigy fanboy. I have been from the beginning. So yeah, that's probably the one I have pushed most on my kids, actually. So
a fine choice. And who's the most famous celebrity that you've met?
Oh God, celebrity. I sat next to Isla Fisher on the way up, which is Sacha Baron Cohen's missus. So
good choice.
I sat next to her on a flight to Edinburgh, so she'll do.
She will do. She will indeed. Do you have a sporting hero?
Probably. I'm a massive Liverpool fan. Have been. 30 years of Herter over now, and
congratulations.
So it'd probably be somebody like Kevin Keegan or Kenny Dalglish from being a kid, really. So.
Okay. And what would you say is the best thing about you?
Just a normal geezer, really.
And what's the worst thing about you?
I'm just a raver that made it lucky. How about that? That's probably what
Why
it
not?
is. So.
Why not? Oh, well, hard work, wasn't it? It wasn't luck. It was hard work.
It was, you know, it was being in the right place at the right time into, you know, basically fell into a style of music that, you know, I loved, but it was almost like I spotted it without other people that were playing it, realizing it was a bit weird. So yeah, it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what's your worst trait?
God. My missus would say smoking.
Well, I think that's probably fair enough, to be honest. And tell us one thing about yourself that will really shock people, that will surprise people.
I don't know. I did 6 years in the Navy and was cleared to top secret. So I did.
Oh, right.
Stuff I'm not allowed to tell you about. So.
Oh, right. Wow. What was it like being in the Navy?
It was cool. I did it from leaving school. It was probably, you know, I still put that down as one of the influences to how I ended up doing this was, you know, one of my best mates in the Navy was from Salford in Manchester, and he was playing me stuff in like sort of the late 80s that, you know, that I'd never heard before. And it was massive influence onto where I went to from there. So,
right, okay.
So yeah, so I owe it. Great time for, you know, I was lucky. I did probably 4.5 years in the Caribbean and up the east coast of the States. So, you know, it was, it was like going on a cruise and getting paid to do it sometimes. So
fantastic. Yeah, that's great. Well, there you go. That's Simon Scorpio. You know a little bit more about him than when you first started this interview. But now we're going to move on to talk a little bit about his early life and his raves, although we found out he was in the Navy, which is a bit of new information we didn't know. But yeah, here we go. And if you want to get in touch, hello at the 90s Rave Podcast.co.uk and on all social medias.
Do you love your hardcore? Do you love your hardcore?
So, Simon, what was life growing up in a relatively remote place like Paignton, Torquay, which is quite cut off from the rest of the country?
Yeah, it was, you know, I was lucky because I travelled from sort of 17, 18 to I was 22 with the Navy. And, you know, so I'd been out to other places. But to be honest, it was, you know, it was your general seaside resort, very, you know, lots of influxes of tourists during the summer and then probably quieting down over the winter. It wasn't, you know, so much as a all year round sort of resort. It seemed to, you could tell the time of year from where you lived. And, you know, in the summers growing up, you know, it was before the, I would say, influx of the package holidays to Europe. It was really busy down here and it was a great place to grow up. So, you know, I could probably walk to the sea when I was a kid in 5 minutes and I could probably walk to the sea now in 2 minutes. So
nice.
Yeah, great place.
And how, that's sort of the idea, I suppose, that it is quite cut off. And I wonder, did that at all shape your musical tastes?
No, not really. I would say my musical taste got, as I said a minute ago, really, the guy in the Navy was, you know, he was playing me stuff like the Mondays and Stone Roses stuff, and he was seeing them in pubs in Salford of a weekend, and you know, it was just. And he come back with so much random music. He got me quite into New Order as well at the time, which was, I would probably put that as one of the, you know, early techno bands, you know, UK techno bands of sorts. And you know, I went to go and see it. I saw him in Washington in something like 1987 with Echo and the Bunnymen. It was like, yeah, okay, I'm feeling this on a bigger scale. And I suppose when I'd left the Navy and I started going out, we did start hitting sort of acid house party clubs in Plymouth, and you know, and you do sort of notice you're into that sort of 4/4 sound, and you're hearing a lot of sort of Belgian techno at the time and Detroit stuff, and it was like, oh, hold on a minute, there's more to this than the commercial bits you're hearing, and that's when you disappear down the rabbit hole and you don't really come back.
So how did you disappear down that rabbit hole? Because nowadays you can disappear down that rabbit hole on the internet really, really easily. But in terms of back then, not quite so easy. How did you explore what sort of music you actually might like?
We had a really, really good record shop in the town. I went in there. I later worked in there, but when my friend was there, and he was really, really knowledgeable, really like just he's a young Chinese lad, and he was just so switched on. He was like a walking record. He knew every catalog number, everything. You ask about a label, and he'd give you the whole back catalog and everything. And it was, we had some really good record shops down here. We had Mighty Force in Exeter, which was run by Mark Darby, who basically first released Aphex Twin. We had, believe it or not, a really good girl who worked in HMV, even in Torquay, that was just on it for techno, but like underground stuff. And, you were going in there and thinking, hold on a minute, you can't get much more commercial than an HMV. Yeah, they had some serious stuff in there. And, it was, the music was never an issue to find. The record shop in Torquay was, when I ended up working there, we were mail ordering stuff all over the UK. Like come the end of it, it was really good, great place to work, great times to be, really.
Yeah, of course. We'll talk a little bit more about working in that shop a little bit later. But so you were a raver then? What was your first? Can you remember your first rave? Can you recall it?
I can recall my first raves that I went to was Zena's in Plymouth. Now Zena's was totally underground, proper acid house party, proper 3 or 4 pretty fairly unknown DJs at the time in there. There was a local guy, Rasta Paul from Torquay. He ran a night there. When they got booted from the venue, then it was taken over by somebody called SAS. Now, SAS translates probably not very much to you at the moment, but when I tell you that it stood for Sean and Simon, and Sean being Ribsy, was the original connection I made with Sean was going to that club very early on. So, that was very underground, not really loads of big names coming in. It was fucking good residents playing fucking good music. So it was just a vibe that even now, thinking back to it, brings a smile to your face, because it was just something else that, like-minded people doing something new. It wasn't what all your other mates were doing over the weekend. They were at run-of-the-mill clubs, and we were traveling like probably 30 miles down to Plymouth to go there. But you'd turn up there and half the town from where you're from was in there. And really, really good times. But as a raver, that wasn't, I didn't play there, never played there. But it had such a massive part on where it all began, really. So.
And did you when you were a raver, did you tend to stay in that local area, or did you ever sort of go further afield than that to any of the other bigger events?
Well, Southwest was kicking, so there were lots and lots of free parties.
Right.
There was
nothing changes.
Sorry.
Nothing changes, does it?
No,
Southwest.
No, they're quite renowned. I wouldn't put them quite as hardcore as the Welsh, but they're of the same ilk, should we say? So in the beginning, I would sort of say it would be Bristol downwards, but from Bristol to the tip of Cornwall, really. It was, there was a lot of stuff going off, and the amount of free parties that were going on between, even sort of halfway between Torquay and Exeter. They've got a big forest, and we used to go back up there for free parties. And I remember going. There's it separated this forest by a dual carriageway. And I went to the garage about like 5 a.m. to get supplies. And I bumped into a lad I know in the garage, and I was like, oh, free party's banging. And he went, I haven't even seen you there. And I'm like, oh, I've been there all night. I've been by the decks. And he's like, really? And then it turns out they were at another free party on the other side of the dual carriageway, and we were on one this side. And between the two, there was like 2,500 people at the party, and like you didn't even know the other one was going off. So,
Amazing.
but yeah, it used to be very, very good down here for parties. Like we got Dartmoor as well, which is very hard to police.
Well, of course. And you like to party clearly from what little we know of you already. Did you get on it? Were you dabbling in drugs, MDMA, acid, anything like that? What were you doing?
Yeah, well, I think that was all part and parcel of the scene back then. It was, yeah, very, very, what's the word? Prevalent, should one say, in
Messy.
The whole thing. Yeah, it was all part and parcel of the experience, and thank God I've come through it okay. But we all did. And anybody that tells you they didn't, it's a liar in my book. So, yeah.
You're in tune to the sound of the DJ Scorpio in the place, rocking down with a real flavour.
So in terms of your DJing, we've talked about you as a raver side, but in terms of your DJing, who first showed you how to do it? How did you get into it?
My mate had a pub with a set of decks in, really. And, we used to go back there. We'd go out partying, go back to the pub, have a lock in, not thing, decks on, booze out, just, and it'd be like everybody, like, I don't know, half a dozen of my mates would all play. So you just, as the night went on, you just go up and do a bit and whatever. And that was really how it started. It was, access to a decent pair of decks, which none of us had then. It was there available, and we were in there most nights. So.
And you're known for your harder styles now, but did you ever get into any of the happier stuff or jungle, or were you always into mixing that harder stuff and the 4-beat?
No. I've got records that some people may term as happy hardcore now that they weren't happy hardcore. It didn't exist when I bought them. So, but yeah, no, it was all forms of breakbeat, just good tunes. And I like good tunes. It's all about the party. It's about making people dance and giving people a good time, and that's my ethic through all of it. It's not about being anal and who can be the most upfront or anything like that. It's the people are there to have a party, to let go and have a good time, and it's our job to do that for them. So,
well, one of your reviews on Discogs says that you are an unashamed crowd pleaser. You always get the party going. Is that? Would you describe your DJ style as that? Is that no one's going to say they're up their own arse in terms of music, but you're definitely not. You're absolutely all about just pleasing the crowd, knowing what they want and delivering it.
And giving it, yeah, totally giving them what they want. It's okay to go, oh, I'm going to play them all this tunes. If that doesn't work, there's no get out clause. It's all about having confidence, going in armed and dangerous of, with what people say, do you plan sets? Yes, I do. For like things are, there's always been times when we've winged it or whatever, because, you may have, back in the day, 3 sets in a night, and there's no way I'm playing the same set at all 3 venues. That's just like a no. Be it play it one way and then play it backwards, it wouldn't be the same, and never has been. So it is about, I'm pure. Having been a raver and watched people, I learned so much from that experience, from the DJs that came and into the crowd, acknowledged the party, people that went to the party, to the DJ that would walk in, do his set, not really take much notice, get paid and fuck off again. That was a big thing for me, because that was something I tried not to do. Sometimes circumstance, when you've got gigs in other towns, you've got no choice in the matter to do that, but it's always, respectful to the club to turn up early, to listen what's going on, to see what they're reacting to give you an idea of what you've got in mind was going to work. Because sometimes you might turn up and go, fuck, they played that, they're not into that, and that's what I'd got planned. So, you know, to change on the fly and understand your audience is another thing as well. So, yeah.
And so when did you first hear what we would define as hardcore techno and decide that that was the route that you were going to forge?
I think it's been quite funny looking back on it, like thinking about this interview. And then we went to, I remember going to Wasp Factory in Plymouth, probably 1990, listening to Lenny D. Predominantly, I would say the biggest influence was Easy Groove by a mile. Dennis was
amazing.
Amazing.
What fantastic selector and DJ.
And he didn't give a fuck. He played what he wanted, when he wanted. He'd turn up at a techno night and play drum and bass. Didn't give a shit. That's what he wanted to play that week. But Dennis would be so diverse in his sets, but he would play some hardcore techno. And it was almost like being that punter, being that, listening and watching the reaction to that little bit. Was what like I'm like, oh, that's amazing, and it's almost latching on to that and going, that bit is the bit of his set that did that for me tonight. That's the bit I want to take from Dennis. I don't want to mimic Dennis, not that I could, but to take that element of what he gave me and go, actually, do you know what? That's the angle where I want to go. So yeah,
what do you think it was about your character that drew you to those sounds?
I don't know, because it wasn't just drawing me, it was drawing a lot of, I think it just something that was just a little bit different to the norm. It was, there were a lot of people playing break beats, there were people playing more jungle. It was just something that had an edge. I always, I grew up, I listened to the Specials, I listened to Stiff Little Fingers. I've got, anything that I've listened to has always had a little bit of a you attitude to it. And it was that. It's almost like when people go, oh, you can't play it that fast. Yes, you can. If you think it sounds good at that speed, play it. Like loads of the tunes I'm known for weren't made to be played at the speed I played them, but it was going on, do you know what? I like it like that. I'm going to play it like that. And that was the, we'd turn up at gigs with screwdrivers and have the platters off because we were buying the tunes that sounded right. They just weren't fast enough. So we were ripping the decks apart for the set and speeding the decks up and everything. So, it was manipulating what you had until there was an abundance of that style of music where you could pick. You were almost having to force the issue a little bit, I think. So.
And you mentioned earlier that you worked in Sounds, which was the local record shop in your area, and it was owned by Mike McGowan, who owned Claire's nightclub as well, where you also played. It was the only real underground club that was in Torquay. How did you manage to get in at the shop? I spoke to Ray Keefe recently, and he said that he made it his mission to get into City Sounds and then Black Market Records because he knew then he would be getting the newest tunes and he'd be meeting the people who he was going to create tunes with. How did you was it as deliberate as Ray, or was it more accidental?
No, well, more accidental. Mike's an absolute legend that runs that shop. He used to be like a guy at Polydor or Polygram, sorry. And he was in charge of the Jam when the Jam released singles, and Debbie Harry and Brian Ferry, like big artists from back when. So Mike is massive music connections anyway. And as I said to you, I was going in there buying. The Chinese guy, Gui, that worked in there was so knowledgeable. But, over time when you're buying stuff, they recognize what you're into and what value you are of that, in that area of music. And, record shops back then to record shops today, totally different ball game. They were a lifestyle destination. People would come in the record shop and they'd be in there all day with you, with sofas, chatting, spending money, listening to tunes. It was if one thing that the internet killed, it was record shops in that form. And that's a bit of a shame, because they were amazing place. All the record shops you used to even just pop in, there was a vibe in all of them. So it was actually Mike's wife, Anne, that asked me to offered me the job. Really, I was coming in, spending all my wages in there anyway. I might as well just earn them and cut out the middleman or something. So yeah, it's yeah. So
and so, how did you go from being a bedroom DJ or a pub DJ to a DJ who played out at say Claire's and then at other places?
Well, I was in the shop, and obviously, you know, the Southwest was booming at that time. You know, early 90s. We had you know, we were putting up parties on ourselves. There were, you know, the venues that we had available to us. There was like Obsession doing stuff at West Point in Exeter. Loads of things going off. Plymouth had 2 amazing venues, the Dance Academy, and the better one of the 2 was Plymouth Warehouse. Amazing. Cornwall Coliseum, again, another great venue. So we had a lot of good venues that were being utilized by rave promoters from around the country, trying to find somewhere a little bit more legitimate to do it rather than a field. We had quite an abundance of venues down here available and ready to go, really. So you know, you'd be in the shop, and you know, we were a ticket outlet. They'd come in, you used to either meet the promoter or the guy selling the tapes, and it's just a massive networking exercise that they come in. You know, a lot of the back then, you know, your promoters, your actual promoters of the parties would be out doing all the flyers, the ticket drops. They would be, you know, clocking thousands of miles a week, visiting every record shop to do it. So you know, you were front and center really for getting in. You know, it's getting in the face, or even just talking to the man. It put me in a very good position, should I say.
And how did you get your DJ name?
I think this got asked in one of the questions I clocked online. So yeah, I did DJ with another guy originally, and because we were both Scorpios, literally the name came from that. At the time, I was erring towards Vinyl Junkie, which I don't suppose John Vinyl Junkie. I don't know whether that has been before his time or afterwards. So, but quite early on, me and the other guy went our separate ways for no other thing. He's still a good mate of mine now. He still plays now. He still probably plays the decks more often than I do in his house, but never really followed that as a path, really. And it went from there, really. So.
Are you into star signs?
No, not really.
Oh, okay.
I like it. Well, to be honest, you know, it's one of those. It's like I'm a Scorpio. It's been not the star sign side of it for me, but you know, there's a lot of bullshit with that side of things. Don't get me started on spiritualism.
Well, to be fair, it's a great name, and particularly for a hardcore techno DJ. So you chose well, and it was fortunate that you were a Scorpio, because if you'd have been,
yeah, I did. I've met a few people afterwards that were in saying that. I remember Ramjack said to me that was on his list of names that he chose till he found out about me. So you know, I'm sure there's others, and I'm not the only one. You know, Grandmaster Flash's DJ was Scorpio, and there's been a couple of others since. So you know, it's not exclusively mine.
No,
I think even
but you're definitely definitely the
DJ
toughest.
DJ Ronnie Size released a drum and bass track under the name Scorpio as well, but I'm not taking credit for that one.
You're definitely the hardest. And did you find it harder to get wider recognition coming from the Southwest, which was cut off, and you wouldn't have had, I wouldn't have thought, the bigger promoters of the massive raves outside of the Southwest going to the Southwest that much and seeing what you could do?
You might be quite surprised, really.
Oh, really?
You know, like we had sort of Dance Planet and Obsession were down here early 90s in quite, you know, doing big parties, doing numbers, and often, and you know, like sort of erring back to your question, I the reason I made it out the Southwest was because I actually met Dave Prattley and Murray at a Dance Planet at Cornwall Coliseum. So it was, yeah, I had a bit of there's a story behind this.
Go on.
There's a story behind this. Was I quite often would play Dance Planets. Quite often, not the whole lineup would turn up for reasons unbeknown. And, you know, I'd play maybe booked to play once, play twice, play 3 times. Even on one occasion, I think I played 4 times and covered the headliner. And afterwards, I went out to get paid, and he gave me the money for the agreed 1 set. And he handed it over to me, and I was stood with Ribsy, and I went, I'm not happy with that. I'm not standing for that. And I still remember to this day, Ribsy turned around to me and he went, Si, have you seen the size of his security? And I looked around to see the size of his security, and I went, yeah. And he went, and this guy looks like Jack from Tekken. I don't know if you remember your old arcade games, and he's a monster. And I went to Ribsy, yeah, I've seen the size of him. And he went, does it not bother you? And I went, he lives 4 doors down from me. So anyway, I had a bit of a verbal argument with the promoter, and that was it. Didn't get any more money out of him, didn't ask for any more money because he had a load of ticket money in the shop anyway. So I just took my wages out of his ticket money when I went back to work on a Monday. And I got a phone call on the Monday, Tuesday after the party, and it was Murray. And Murray rang me up and he was going, just answer me one question. And I went, yeah. And he went, why didn't you hit him? And I said, well, you know, I'm stood there with ambitions to play outside the Southwest. I've got 2 massively respected promoters in the building. I'm not going to be kicking off.
Punching promoters.
And he said, oh, we were just waiting for you to hit him. We were really upset that you didn't. But to be honest, that was the phone call where Murray booked me for Dreamscape, which was my route out of the Southwest. So, you know, reasons, was it fate, whatever, it, you know, that the result from that night, I ended up being booked by Murray, which was my first booking sort of outside the Southwest. And then straight followed up a day later by Dave Prattley and booked outside the Southwest.
Wow.
So I must have done something right that night. So
well, not punching someone probably.
No. I'm very calm.
Did you, I mean, did that, how did you feel when you had those back-to-back phone calls from those 2 of the most eminent promoters in UK rave?
They were like, you know, that's like setting yourself a goal, or, you know, or thinking, you know, I'd like to be doing that at a certain time, and then going down, playing a party and it being recognised. But, you know, they both did recognise. They were in parties. Both Murray and Dave would be in there at the party, watching what's going on, being aware of everything around them, because that was their game. They knew what to do. Murray was very entrenched in the Southwest. Yeah, you know, I think even Clarkie's honorary Cornish now. Master Vive, again, who played for Murray, was again Cornish boy. They Easy Groove, massively influenced in Dreamscape. There was a strong Southwest contingent anyway, so it was quite nice that it wasn't just me. A lot of the guys that were doing the scene down here at the time got recognised by other promoters.
And did playing Skelter and Dreamscape live up to your expectations and hopes?
More so. I heard toward it a minute ago when I played my first Skelter. I followed Dave Angel, and, you know, I just went up there. I'd played Plymouth the Christmas before, like a Christmas party with Clarkie, which was probably one of the first times I played with Clarkie. And I remember him turning up, and he played and I played, and he was going, I think I played before him, and he was there going, oh, thank fuck, I found someone else that plays tunes like me. And it was, you know, to go up there and then to play your music to, you know, people that had not heard you play before, and to get the response that it did was phenomenal, really. It was more so for me, you know, Dreamscape was a bit of I was probably a bit of a rabbit in the headlights, that I don't really remember that much about it. It was more get it right, do it right. You know, you're here to show what you do. The first Skelter just played. The reaction was amazing. Dave rung me after that one and said to me, he went, oh, that set's already legendary. This is like a couple of days after the party. And I was like, oh, and he went, but I'm just ringing to tell you that just the way I am, I don't book people on consecutive parties. He went, so it's no offense to you that you're not on the next one or whatever. And I was going, no, I didn't expect to be anyway. And he went, well, I'll just sort of let you know. And I missed that one. And I think I did pretty much everyone after that. So, you know, he was true to his words. You wouldn't do everyone, but I did nearly everyone.
He realised his mistake of not booking you that second time, really, quite clearly. And after that, did you start getting sent more dub plates because you became this more prominent DJ? Were dub plates a thing in this in the hardcore techno scene in the same way?
They were far rarer than I would say they were amongst the happy jocks. That you know, you got them. The people were that you knew the people that were playing the music. You know, were there any that came from abroad? Because obviously there was the hardcore. I'd say 90. No, not promos from abroad, not at all. No, the way you got your promos from abroad was more so being in the record shop, making the connections at the distributors. That was they were far more important. Like Lee Musprat, who worked at Mo's Music Machine. Lee was, you know, he knew what I was into, and you know, I would order stuff from him, and he would just go, "Oh, sorry, I've got you this," and it was just spot on. And he was like, he would have like what Mo's Music's promos that, you know, a lot of people who would be visiting Mo's in London would be getting them, but because we had this edge and we weren't looking for what they were getting. There was this other pile of promos that probably weren't getting distributed how they were. And then, you know, I've spoke to Fergus, you know, and I know Fergus in years gone by worked heavily with Mo's and worked in a record shop, and he was saying, you know, Lee used to sort us right out because we were their arm. We worked in the shops, and you know, you get that to us, and then we're ordering it, and it's a chain reaction. So no, more come through the record distributors. Calvin at Alpha Magic, another one, you know, and then later on when Ribsy got a job at Prime, you know, it's all, you make connections as you go, but more so very rarely, unless it was people you knew or had met as you traveled, like going along, you were getting promos, but not on the scale that everybody else is. My dubs is a very small part of my collection.
Oh, really? Well, that was a question from Tom Crago. Thanks for that, Tom. And James Hine, who's another big fan of yours, he asked, what's your favourite record label of all time?
All time? God, that's a tough one. It would probably be, I'd have to say Enzyme, because I'm a big Ophidian fanboy. The guy's almost he's like a digital Mozart. He makes really good tunes, really structured, but just beautiful with it. So yeah, Enzyme. There's too many. It's a 30-year span to narrow it down to one label. Heidi should know better.
maybe he's trying to stitch you up there, Heine. And what is your view on MCs? Because I know that you're pals with Ribs. He is my favourite hardcore MC. And I've got to say, the hardcore techno MCs, including Squidgy B in this and Sharky, I feel like they seem to be more understanding of the music than perhaps in other scenes. Is that fair? And if that is if that is true, why do you think that is?
Ribsy's a DJ, so Ribsy he knows when to speak, when to shut up. Squidgy was very much, you know, me and Squidgy travelled everywhere together. He was my wingman in the car. He was my wingman at the party. He was my wingman at the after party. And he lives about 500 yards down the road. So he knew, you know, the beauty of him was he knew all my tunes. John Sharky I've known since he was 15. He first emceed me in a club when he was 15, and I remember my mate brought him in, like, can my mate MC for you? And I was like, is he even old enough to be in here? And no. So, you know, this is pre-John meeting Druid and all that lot. So, you know, we all go back such a long we we've all got such good history with each other. There was so much banter on the mics with each other, so much piss taking. It was all part of the thing. I remember often we'll be listening to a tape in the car or whatever, and like just listen to something Sharky had said during a party, and be like, oh my God, I can't believe he's just said that. But it was in jokes as well. You'd have stuff that would be said and nobody else would really twig, and you just, there was a vibe. MCs, I like MCs. There is some really good MCs. Some MCs need to understand that you're there it's about the music. It's not about them. I prefer a host to an MC, more so. They're your guided tour on your journey. They're taking you there. That's the job.
In terms of Sharky, he's had some tough times recently, which have been documented in the papers. But a lot of people have been asking about him just for his funniest stories, because he's such a character on and off the mic. So let's remember some happy times of Sharky. Is there a moment, a memory of him in your mind that sticks out, apart from that first time you met him when he was too young to be in the club? But is there a messiest moment or a funniest moment involved with Sharky? Let's remember some fun times.
It's honestly, he was just so random. It was he could do stuff that no other MC was. He had an absolute rapport with the guys on the decks, the other guys on the mic, the ravers in the audience. He was partying harder than them. He was the go-to guy. He was a proper vibe creator. He was, I've got nothing but love for John. He's amazing, and I hope, I've read the same article as well, and I just hope he's on the way to getting better. And if any of it, it'd be nice to see him out and to get him out. And he came to Bristol probably 2 years ago with me and Squidge for Mark Smith's birthday, and he was good then, and reading that was a little bit distressing. You don't want to see any of your friends in that situation, and I just hope he gets better soon, really. So.
Well, we all do, I think. And John, if you ever happen to be listening to this, I've known you admittedly a very small amount over the years, but we all of us who are listening to this, all huge fans of yours here on Raw, and all of our listeners, and we all wish that you the very best, and we hope you're back on your feet soon. And if you are listening to this, make sure you come on the podcast, because we want to celebrate all of your fantastic moments in the scene.
Hear, hear.
Are you ready for the sound of DJ Scorpio?
Well, we hope you're enjoying today's episode of Raw, but now's where we ask you inevitably for your help to keep this project rolling on. We're a tight-knit team of 4 working part-time for free, taking no wages out of this project to create this podcast, and it's quite a serious undertaking alongside our normal day jobs. Hopefully you can see from our progression from audio to video in the few months since we started this podcast that, thanks to your ongoing donations, we've managed to improve our equipment. And I'm pleased to say your generosity means this podcast now washes its own face in terms of costs, which is absolutely great news. And thank you so much to any of you who've donated. We've got big plans for the future, but we aren't going to be able to do it without your support. So if you want us to keep making Raw, you're going to need to keep on funding Raw, and that will help with the cost of renting or buying recording kit and paying expenses to travel the country and interview more of your favourite rave artists from the 90s. So if you can spare anything at all, no matter how big or how small, you can do so at gofundme.com/the 90s Rave Podcast. That URL again is gofundme.com/the 90s Rave Podcast. And if you're not in a position to donate, because we know it's a tough time for everybody, you can instead help by subscribing and sharing our content on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. You just need to search for Raw, the 90s Rave Podcast. Go and do that now, please. Massive love and respect to each and every one of you. So, Simon, we talked about Dreamscape and how you came to be booked for them, and also Helter Skelter, but lots of people, really, it's Helter Skelter where you're probably best associated for those big 90s raves. Matt Edwards has asked, he wants to know what it was like DJing in the Technodrome between sort of 96 and 98 when hardcore techno was at its peak fan base wise in the UK. Well, that's at least his opinion.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with it. It was amazing. It was, you know, that's the pinnacle of your career, really. I would say it was just vibe. You know, those Helter Skelter just hit the nail on the head with their parties. They got their techno room right. It became, the Technodrome is as much, a name used as Helter Skelter. For the size of the room, how legendary it is should answer most people's questions, because its legend is far bigger than the room it was given.
Nice answer. And there's been talk that Helter Skelter would come back. It wouldn't be a Helter Skelter reunion without DJ Scorpio, would it?
It wouldn't be a Helter Skelter reunion without all the jocks that played at Skelter. Because
I know, but you're not them. That's why I'm asking you.
It's just a party, and by all means, if it was to happen, I've seen enough people who go, oh, it's not going to happen and all this. Well, the longer this COVID goes on, actually every generation is itching for a night out. And, I can see quite possibly that happening. I did Resurrection in Scotland last year, pre-COVID. And 12,000 people at Ingliston sold out for a hardcore party, and that was probably a lot more techno than it was happy hardcore. If they can pull 12,000 people to Edinburgh, can Helter Skelter pull 15,000 people plus in England? Yeah. And with the amount of people that want to go out, even more so. It's I don't think it's pie in the sky once all this is over. There's going to be a few rules imposed on everyone until you're coming out the other end of COVID. And would you risk a large amount of money on a big party when people like to shaft you at the last minute and go, actually, no, there you go, lose all your money again. I would say it's probably more of a possibility now than it's been before.
Well, I mean, we're hearing stuff as well this end. It does look like it's not pie in the sky. Now, people will say it is, but from what I've heard from people close to Dave, it isn't pie in the sky. It's by no means a done deal, but it's not a pie in the sky.
Yeah, I'm of the same ilk. When Majika first announced it, I was a little bit skeptical. Seeing Matt do it was a whole different ball game. And I know Dave. Dave is a fucking good promoter, a very, very clever businessman, and a top bloke. And if he thinks it's right, he'll know more than all of us lot put together whether it's right. And at the end of the day, if it's right, he'd do it. And I think if it isn't done post this, I can't see it ever sort of happening. I think this would be a prime time to do it.
Cy Rose asks that you and Clarkey were accepted by the Happy crew, and you often would play in the Happy rooms at raves when other harder DJs would never have been accepted. He wants to know what the secret of that acceptance was and whether you would adapt your sound to that Happy crowd.
I think I covered that a bit earlier when, you would adapt your sound, but you'd
in what way? How would you do so? Just the style of tunes you were playing, maybe a little bit more less industrial, maybe a bit more party edged, a bit more riff based, where you're trying to drag them over. Like the last thing you want to do is scare them off before you almost, it's like you tug of war, pulling them in a little bit by, and you'll drop one tune and then all of a sudden they go, oh, actually I didn't realize it was like this. And there's too many people were focused on the speed, and it isn't about the speed, because I've listened. It's how you play your music, and it's you would definitely tailor my set in the main room to a set in the back room would be different. It would be just more of
yeah, this is what we do, but that's more at that end of the scale.
Well, in that vein, would you? We know you planned your sets because you've said that, but would you also plan your sets based on who you were after? So, for instance, in the techno room where anything goes, you might have a slower set like M Zone or Ribs, and then you've got HMS or whatever playing their, or Loft Groover playing their speedcore. Would you play faster or slower depending on who you were following, whether it was one of the slower DJs or the faster DJs?
No respect. No, no. You'd like say I was following Loft or whatever. You knew Loft or H were going to finish at some incredible BPMs. You can't just mix into that and then carry on for another hour.
Well, everyone needs a fucking rest as well, frankly.
Yeah. So it was find a fucking big intro that that by the time the intro's finished and it's about to kick, it's they've forgotten how fast they were dancing that minute and a half, 2 minutes before, and you're off on this ride. It's not, no, you wouldn't, you would possibly, no, maybe how you finished your set, you might not, you might leave it for somebody else by not going that. If it was somebody following you playing sort of techno and trance or purist techno or whatever, you might not cane it as much, but not always.
Okay. And Lee Samways wants to know, what's the best set you've ever played in your eyes?
Oh God. I was dreading this question. You can't put 30 years into one set. Not a chance. Yeah, too many. And and if you, yeah, no, I could never answer that. They've all got elements. There's some, I hopefully haven't played my best set ever yet. So.
Good answer. Well done. And what's the dodgiest rave you've ever played, and why?
Oh, dodgy raves. We had a few. There was a dance planet in Aston Villa Leisure Centre once that was quite scary.
Because of...
Oh, yeah, because of where
Guns and gangsters, right?
Guns, yeah, gangsters. The funny thing was, I played the Leisure Centre first, and then I actually had a gig at Die Hard. So I played and then left and did my gig at Die Hard, but actually because everyone we were out with was all at Dance Planet in at the Aston Villa Leisure Centre, the plan was to go back there. And the difference of leaving to go to play at Die Hard, played at Die Hard, finished, and get back to Aston Villa Leisure Centre, and it was almost like they'd transported the rave to Beirut, and there were, like I remember stood there and saw a knife go down the canvas on the side of the merchandise stall like that, and then the arm come, and then the arms reaching through and stealing all the merchandise, and the security didn't help because they were all dressed like paramilitaries. It was just, there were people getting massively taxed in the toilets, and it was scary-ish. Did
you sort of quietly quite like that sort of, because you're a hardcore techno DJ, so hardcore techno DJs and hardcore techno gigs do attract interesting people. Do you quite like those sort of? It's a bit edgy.
I would completely counteract that. The tough side of our room isn't the people; it's the music. The image that it's painted, because like I'm not a fan of speedcore. I've got my limit on a BPM, and after that, it's whatever.
Noise. I'm sorry to speedcore fans, but look, I like your stuff, Scorpio, but I can't. I personally can't get with that sort of, when it's just one long noise. For me, that's not really my vibe. So
like We've all got a hammer drill anyway, so it's but it's there was an element of that. It was like it was skinhead Nazi music. No, it wasn't. It was as much had a anti-fascist theme as like the two-tone movement. So
do you remember there was a piece that was written in one of the newspapers about
David Starr, Loft Groover.
Yeah, it was like, my old boss wrote that.
It was good at research then.
Well, quite. No, research wasn't really high on his skill set, to be honest. He was more a chuck it in the paper and worry later type, to be honest. And I mean, that's reflected in a lot of his behaviours. I will say he's not. He's not the most ethical or best journalist going, but I always found it quite amusing. Had he just asked anybody, no, Loughgrove is not a fascist guy, mate.
out of that room, there was probably 2 or 3 people that you shouldn't really have labelled that with. You could have picked a few others, and it might have worked. Your story might have been had a bit more credibility about it. So, but it was good because when you read it, it was just like it was almost you watching a car crash happen as you read through the article, and then you read about the fascism, the skinheads, and then the prolific DJ in that scene is a DJ called Loughgrove, who's black.
And because you live so far away in the southwest, and you would, like you say, you'd do Villa, do Leicester, then whatever. But there would have been even more, because actually a lot of the stuff that you play was very popular the further north you went. Did it not get very incredibly annoying living so far away from and having to just spend hours and hours each weekend on the road?
Well, it was really, in the early 90s, we were putting on parties down here. We did some parties called Omnitech. It was 2 friends of mine that had the money, and with the help of myself being in the scene and that, and putting on nights. We had some serious nights. Plymouth Warehouse, we had Carl Cox down, where that interview come from that Ollie shared. That Plymouth Warehouse, I think it was licensed for 1,700, and we put 2,700 in with one more at the back and stuff. So it was really popular down here, but it was weird how it then started. I noticed there was this little area of North Wales that started at roughly similar sort of time, when clubs like Dolphin did Steam up in Rill, playing the same music. And hold on a minute, this is really weird. I live in a seaside town in the southwest, and there's a seaside town up in the northwest that's doing something similar. And you just started noticing little pockets coming up around the country. And it was driving doesn't bother me. I could get to Manchester from Torquay in 3.5, 4 hours. It's not a ball ache.
You drive like you DJ.
Yeah, it's not good when you're listening to your set.
Hard and fast.
Hard and fast.
And were you playing abroad much as well? What were your favourite countries abroad?
I played in Germany. I haven't actually played in Holland. I played in France. Holland, that was possibly a miss. Did I miss an opportunity? Did I not? Maybe if I'd have done a bit more production, I might have hit Holland. It's very hard for, at the end of the day, to expect, am I going to go out there as an English guy that plays Dutch music, playing for Dutch, when there's some other Dutch DJs out there that play the same? I get that. To be honest, I love the English scene. We had great parties, great people, the amount of friends that I've had right the way through. And as you said, they are more dedicated to their style of music. It's not just a fad they were in for 2 or 3 years. They're still in it 20 odd years later as a punter. I have traveled abroad with it, but maybe a bit if I'd have done a little bit more production. But
is that a regret?
Sorry,
is that a regret?
Not really, because I would say I had kids, a family, a job. After I was working in the record shop, and I did all my computer exams and that while I had the time and stuff. And it got to a point where you go, is this a full-time career for the rest of your life when you got a family and commitments? And could I have gone down that route? Yes, possibly. Did I want to give myself a bit more of a foundation going? And to be honest, from the point I worked for IBM for 15 years, and I never relied on my DJing for an income, so I enjoyed it more. So I didn't have to take that booking 6-hour drive away when it's going to be dead to do another 6-hour drive home, and then it becomes a bit of a job. And for me, it's not a job. It's, I'm lucky that I get to play the music I like to other people. that's the way I've always looked at it. And if you can do that, I feel for so many of the guys now with all this going on with COVID that, that is their income, and they've been screwed left, right and centre by the authorities and what's going on, perhaps I didn't make the right choice. Nobody's going to ever know, but it's, for me, the fact that I had a 9-to-5 job that I did, that paid my bills. When I went out to party, it was, I did the parties that I wanted to do because I knew they'd be good and I'd enjoy them and it's thing. And, if they weren't busy, it didn't ever screwed me to go to a promoter. Oh, you've had a shit night, just take that off it or whatever, because that wasn't the reliance for my income. And you can see it for other people of how that would be. But so, yeah, you could have, but I wouldn't be where I am now, so I can't really change my actions.
Why did you not produce more?
Just time. I worked for IBM for 15 years, so I'd work Monday to Friday. I'd finish work on a Friday, being in the Southwest, and then I'd probably have a gig in Manchester or somewhere up north. So I'd literally come home, get in the car, disappear, and I'd get home sometime Sunday, and then I'm back at work Monday morning, and I've got kids and stuff that you got to do with your kids, and because you're not available at weekends, that's the time you do with your kids. It's just prioritizing what is the most important thing in your life. And to be honest with you, I've made tunes, and I'd love the opportunity to have made more, but something had to give, and it was probably that side, and I would rather that more than anything, because I like playing music to people, and I don't care whose music it is as long as it's good. So
is that why your record label Semtex didn't last for as long as it might have done? Was that to do with the shortness of that?
No. So Semtex was started by it wasn't my label. It was a friend of mine called Steve. He started the label, and it was doing okay. And Steve, he was making tunes. The other guy that was down here was making tunes. Another guy from Torquay is a guy called Dave Parkinson. Now, Dave is one of the top ghost producers in the UK now. He moved away. I used to go around his house and he would engineer some of the stuff. But Dave, Dave's made tunes for Oakenfold, Tiesto, Van Buren. He's in even toured as a keyboard player with the Happy Mondays, and wrote one of their albums with them. So, I think it was more the fact that Dave moved up to London, really, and the opportunities. It's one of those. I've started making tunes again recently. I've got a new tune I've done with Antones that we were going to release pretty much as lockdown started. So that's back in the vault until after lockdown. So it's not it never happens. It's just when you get the time, and hopefully, there is plans to do more. So
okay, that's great. A lot of people would be very excited to hear that. And your most famous collaboration, really, though, is DJ producer Luke McMillan. People are really interested to know about your back-to-back sets with him, which were went down in legend. How did you first meet?
At party in Plymouth, he was playing. I met him through Ribsy. Ribsy knew Luke from a long time. Ribsy and Luke was sort of coming down here with the Revelation parties that Mac One put on. Ribsy a DJ at those. I played one. So we were around each other. I think possibly it's Dance Planet that put us back to back first. I'm not 1,000% sure, but I'm pretty sure it was Dance Planet where we first did the back-to-backs. A lot of people go, oh, is it because you were so similar? We're not similar at all. The reason it worked was we were of a genre, but almost opposing poles of the genre. Luke was more on the industrial vibe, and it basically was like the dark and light. And our back-to-backs, some people you see back-to-back were one on, one off, two on, two off. We were more like 3 on, 3 off, so you could take it your way, and then the other one would bring it back, and then they'd take it that way, and it worked better than, you know, nothing was ever expected of it. It wasn't put there. You know, I remember Luke used to comment, and when people go, "Oh, Scorpio versus producer," he's like, it's not a versus. It's back to back. It's not a verse. You know, he's my mate or whatever. So, you know, it was. You know, we were just of a scene, and there wasn't loads of people. There was this, you know, your Lofty, your Clarky, Easy Groove of a sorts. HMS. I'm going to get shot for leaving people out here, but you know, it was not a massive scope of DJs out there playing it, and then it sort of grew as your Dolphin and the North Wales thing has happened and everything. So it's more we evolved as friends as well as DJs, as like the whole thing. And like, even with the crowd, some of them guys, you know, you've known them 30 years in the crowd, you know, it's they've all become personal friends. So.
You think you said earlier that, you know, the peak was 96 to 98. Was there ever a period, maybe it was after that, I don't know, where you sort of questioned where the harder style of music was going and you weren't quite as into it as you might have been?
Well, not really. I think it was a bit different for us from the happy hardcore scene, because there was a bit of a lull, sort of the late 90s, definite lull after the millennium, which, you know, killed things. And, you know, there was a dip in that sort of what I would call like the main room scene. But when you from 1997 sort of time, we'd sort of evolved, as well as doing the Technodrome. You see the popularity of techno, and you see a room that's not big enough for the amount of people that want to get in and stuff like that. And, you know, when Andy Bowler started, there was the Steam Nights up in Rill. The original guy that was putting on the Steam Nights, I try to remember back the story. And when thinking about this yesterday, that there was an original guy that I don't know whether he ran the venue or was the promoter, and he pulled out, and then Andy Bowler took over doing that night, and then that evolved into Death Row Techno merging with them. So there was like a joining of the North and the South scenes together, which was again really good. And then they put on the Death Row Techno parties at Milton Keynes, which again was a bigger scale. That was us taking the main room at Milton Keynes and doing a party. You know, it wasn't as rammed as, you know, as a mainstream thing, but they were good parties there. But that seemed to stem from then that North grew out of the Death Row collaboration, because after those parties there was a bit of a fracture split back the other way, although it was still there. And that was the beginning of North. And, you know, like I remember seeing a flyer last night, just looking back, just trying to fix some memories for this interview. And, you know, like in 1997, we were doing weekly parties at the Void in Stoke, and they were fucking banging lineups week in, week out, week in, week out. And, you know, that when you're seeing the sort of happy scene not die but drop back, and your scene's there, because there wasn't loads of clubs doing it. There was, you know, there were niche techno clubs all over the country, but, you know, there wasn't big numbers. Didn't have to be a massive club as long as it's a good sound system, and, you know, you get enough numbers in there to make it a good night. So and that went through well into the past the millennium that was working. So I didn't really see that sort of dip that the happy hardcore boys sort of saw in their scene.
Well, slightly related to that, Simon Paul Worth asks, he wonders what your view is on the relationship between hardcore techno and happy hardcore, and could hardcore have achieved greater credibility and longevity if the happy DJs and producers had focused more on integrating some of the elements of hardcore techno into the UK sound, and less on the sort of, well, he says stabs and vocals, but I think we all know what he means, cheese.
Yeah, well, you know, you've still got those elements there, you know, like as much as there's the You know, so many other people did do that. Look at Brisky cross that boundary between that room and our room. Joey Riot's done it in latter years more so, and smashed it abroad with his Destructive Tendencies act as well. So there was Scott Brown, another one. Do you get what I mean? So that did happen. But, you know, I don't really want, I want people to play that music that have got some passion for it, that want to do it. It's not just because it works. It's, you know, there were promoters that were really open to it, and there were promoters that fucking hated it. And they try so many other things, like, you know, they put in, naming no names, certain promoters would put in get rid of the techno room and put a hard house room in, or get rid of the techno room and put something, you know, and it was just like that. And then you go, what's the party like? Oh, that room was empty because nobody's going to go to a hardcore rave for a hard house room. True. So they work together, and, you know, people like Hixxy with HCID followed very much the same ethic as Dave Prattley did, of, like, you know, maybe not enough. I think sometimes that it probably deserved a little bit more in the main room rather than a token hardcore set. Maybe two would have broken up. You know, we all started going out when rooms were variety. You'd have a piano happy hardcore bass DJ followed by a jungle DJ followed by somebody playing some techno, a bit of everything, and people were so much more accepting of other styles of music. And then suddenly it became very, you know, very focused down one, and maybe a token set of this in, or maybe a token set of that. And it just became too much of that. I think if they'd kept a little bit more diversity with them, it would probably carry them through longer.
And why do you think that hardcore techno and gabba isn't as big in the UK as it is in parts of Europe? And why was it that happy hardcore and jungle dominated the UK raves, and techno just didn't get that big explosion that we've seen? For instance, Holland's a great example.
Yeah, Holland's a massive example, but, you know, their version of Radio 1 in Holland will play gabba tunes. Do you get what I mean? They are so much more, what's the word? It's so much more around their everyday life. They hear gabba, techno, hardcore techno in going about their normal life. A lot of people in this country don't. And a lot of people are immediately focused on the BPMs, and it's not about that. You know, when I played some of my mates that make deep house music, I played like one of producers' songs and go listen to that, and, you know, I'm going, they go, oh, it's too fast. I'm going, just listen past that. Listen to this guy's fucking production. Listen to how it's made. And then they listen and they go, actually, yeah, do you get what I mean? It's almost breaking down that preconceived barrier that's not actually there. So it's, you know, Holland is, you know, me and my partner went over to Thunderdome in October last year. Phenomenal, you know, mind blown after 30 years of 50,000 people all listening to the music that I like. Like, you imagine turning up and half of Glastonbury is hardcore techno. There were 50,000 people there with 6 arenas, and every room you went in was your sort of music. It's like, you know, you're going, oh my God, it's like Narnia or whatever. It's like you've turned up. Yeah, did I die yesterday? And this is where I've ended up. So, you know, it's weird because, like, you look, happy hardcore, we broke UK with that style of music more than happy hardcore broke Europe with theirs. So, you know, it's like, sometimes I think if they'd given it a little bit more exposure, it could have, and I think for other circumstances in the techno scene, it could have been a lot bigger had things happened in different ways. Do you get what I mean? But, you know, hindsight's a wonderful thing. So.
It is indeed. You are listening to DJ Scorpio here on Raw, the 90s Rave Podcast. Get in touch, hello@the90sravepodcast.co.uk on email, and also on social media. We're going to wrap this interview up very shortly and bring you bang up to date with what Mr. Simon Scorpio is up to at this minute and what he thinks is the future of the hardcore techno scene.
Do you love your hardcore? Do you love your hardcore?
So, Simon, prior to COVID, how often were you playing out, and what sort of events were you playing out at, given that, you know, those big raves that did feature rooms with hardcore techno no longer really do that anymore?
Yeah, no, I would say it took, you know, North probably ran from 97 to 2012, forget the dates right. After that, you know, the number of events that were going off definitely dipped. But you know, I don't chase gigs. I've never been one to chase gigs. If they want me to play, I'll play your party, and I'll, you know, it's. So to be honest with you, I actually, pre-COVID, this year was looking quite nice. I had some nice little festivals lined up. I was going back to Scotland again to do the same guys that put on that Resurrection for one night only are doing an Ultimate 90s event in April. I'll get a plug in there for Martin Langer.
I think we're all going to be gagging for that one.
Yeah, well, to be honest, after that Return of Resurrection, you know, I walked in with producer, and I think the venue had been open for like 45 minutes on a Saturday afternoon in April in Scotland, and you're like, okay, they haven't done a party for God knows 15, 20 years. What's it going to be like? And we walked into that main room at 12:45 lunchtime, and there were 8,000 people dancing. And I could tell you the tune that was on. It was Jones and Stevenson, First Rebirth, and it like me and producer just looked at each other. He turned back to me and he was like, "Shit's just got real." It was like a time warp, stepping back in and go, "Fuck me, man, where did all these people come from?" And you know that there's another one of them lined up for April, which has already gone April, July, September, back to April next year. So, you know, it could move, but I don't see it not happening, which is, you know, which is a good thing. And all the other talk, I've seen talk of Pandemonium coming back, you know, the talk of Skelter coming back. It could be post-COVID, could be really healthy for lots of scenes, because there is such a glut of people wanting to go out. I think it is like, you know, if you're going to take any positivity out of this, they've stopped us partying for a year. They're not going to stop us partying forever. And, you know, I'm seeing some of the younger elements are already itching far more than, you know, somebody that's been partying for 30 years to get them do it. But, you know, I don't blame them, because everybody's getting a bit stir crazy now, and they want to go out and have a good time. So, and I think that's going to be a massive driving force post-COVID. So.
And while it's not hit you necessarily financially, because you don't rely on it, how much are you itching to play out? How you must just be gagging.
Oh, absolutely gagging. It's you know, that's one of your personal highs. You know where you used to get high to get high. Back in the day, you don't need to do that. You've got other things that can, you know, standing up in front of a crowd and watching them go off to your music is unsurpassable at times. You know, just watching a whole place with the bounce that you get, and everyone's in sync, and you know, it's just it's stuff like that you want to get back to and that you miss. And you know, we've all missed out this year. You know, there's even those that have been to a couple of free parties or whatever have still missed out. We've all missed out big time, and I think it's everybody. I've not met anybody that's not itching to go out.
Well, talking about people who are itching to go out, before we close the show, I want to give a shout out to Ollie Thumper Yates, who is absolutely hardcore techno mad. He's a big fan of yours, a big friend of yours as well, and he helped set up this interview. So thank you, Ollie, for doing that, and also working with me on the preparation for it. You're a regular at his Chapel of Chaos nights. They're always banging up in Birmingham, aren't they? Is that one of your modern favourites?
Oh, totally a modern favourite. It's got a vibe. Again, with this, it all goes back. The things that stick in your mind are clubs that you've done that you know you buzz about. Oh, I'm going there tonight, or I'm doing this. Not just because of the club, not just because of the music, not just because of the lineup, because of the punters that are in there as well. It's like, you know, you're catching up with long-time friends and like-minded people all in the same place. It's almost like all the pieces come together. And you know, Ollie is like I love Ollie. He's a legend. He's so fucking knowledgeable about. He knows more about my sets than I know about my sets. I should have done some research with Ollie, because he tells me things that I've done, or I might have to clear them, not clear them with him, check them just to make sure I'm right. And I even sent him a mix I did at the weekend, and I put 90s mix, and then very shortly afterwards realised that I put in one tune post 90s that I'd done, and I was like, fuck, Ollie's going to notice that. And then I messaged him and went like, I think I've made a mistake and put one post 90s in that mix, and he went like, oh, was it this one? I thought, I didn't even think about that one. So I went back and checked, and I put 2 post 90s tunes in it. So
oh dear, was this the mix you were putting together for us, Si?
But it wasn't the mix that I'm putting together for you. You're getting your own special mix, Tom.
Fantastic.
I'm not one to recycle mixes. I was going to ask you probably post-interview when you're putting this out, so I can get that done and coordinated. It'll be with you by the weekend anyway.
Oh, people will love it. People will love that, mate, because loads of people have been saying, I hope you're going to do the guest exclusive guest set mix with Scorpio as well, like you've done with everyone else. As I say, is all those people who loved you over the years, they still retain a massive love for you. To look back now, finally, a few people have been asking this. What was your favourite year of the 90s for your DJing and your playing out and your party, whatever you want? What was your favourite year and why?
Probably 97, just because it just had elements of everything. Skelter was flying. Did Australia for Dave as well. Flew over and did like 3 parties in Australia, like a big party in Sydney, which was probably at the time one of the biggest things that had gone off there. I spent most of that time corrupting Hixxy while I was out there.
Go on.
And became very good friends with him, and that stood the time.
I want to explore this corrupting Hixxy. What were you doing?
I think it was that period that Hixxy decided that it was no longer a wise decision to drink. I think he may have come off that bandwagon in the recent couple of years. I'm not too sure, but for a massive period, that was my fault. We basically roomed together for the trip of Australia. Did Sydney. We flew to Sydney, did some promo work, and did the party. Then flew to Adelaide, and then flew to Perth, and then back to Sydney. So we spent quite a lot of time together, and we had a bit of a drink in Sydney with a Aussie DJ called Kyle, DJ Daydream, out there. And basically we were back to the apartment, and it was bring a bottle each. And I think somebody had a bottle of JD, somebody had a bottle of Southern Comfort, and then I bought a bottle of Jaeger to finish in the freezer. And we were unfortunately flying to Adelaide the next morning, because Hixxy had a gig in Adelaide and I didn't. So we were pretty much up all night, drinking, collapsing, and then with an emergency exit out of Sydney early the next morning, at which point Ian was like, almost like hanging out of the taxi from his armpits up all the way to the airport. I ended up having to push him on the luggage trolley through the airport, at which point he was meant to sit next to me for the flight, but sat at the back with the stewardesses. And it was I think he'll probably remember that night as the one time he DJ'd his set sat on a stool because he couldn't stand up still. So, and we the next night after that, I actually went out in Adelaide after his gig. He went back to the hotel for some sleep, and I went out till like 6 the next morning with some Adelaide guys. And we missed the flight to Perth for our other gig the next day. So that was due to my late arrival. And we walked around, weirdly, just killing some time in Adelaide, and walked in a park and bumped into Brisk. And he was going, save me from him. He's just been ruining me while we were there. So, yeah, we made Perth later that evening and did the gig down there. But yeah, it was 97 was just too many big parties after big parties, really. So yeah, I would say that was probably the strongest year. Yeah.
Wicked, man. And just our final question we ask everybody, is there anybody that you'd really like to hear us interview, and why would that be from the 90s rave scene?
Well, I actually rang him before I did this today, and Ribsy's been such a friend, influence on my career. He has done everything. He is, big guys. Everybody respects Ribsy for, he's a fucking good DJ in his own right, and as an MC, is unsurpassable. He gets people from other genres. Bookham will want him. As a hardcore techno jock will want him. Happy hardcore jocks don't mind having him on there. So everybody is acceptable. He's been there, seen it, done it. I would say Ribsy by a mile.
Well, Ollie did put us in touch, and I texted him, and he ignored me. So next time you give him a call, you got to tell him that there's a spot waiting for him on the 90s Rave podcast.
I will do.
We'd love to have him.
I was telling him about it earlier, and he turned around to me and said, I said, "Oh, you should go out and check out the Slipmat one." I said, "You'll really enjoy the Slipmat interview, and you'll get a vibe of what it's about." It's you. I think from watching that one, I understood what the podcast was. It's chatting about old times, and that boy has been there, seen it, and done it more than any of us. He's hardcore through and through, and still looks as young today as he's always done.
I know, so. Still doing it. And did he say he would do it?
Hey?
Did he say he would do the podcast? Good man. Good man. Well done. Well done. Listen.
Don't send Ollie to do a man's job.
That's very true. Ollie, if you're listening, leave it to the professional. Ty, you're an absolute legend. It's been fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. I know it's been a long old interview, but I hope you've enjoyed it. Bringing back some of those really old memories. Top man, mate. And listen, we can't wait for COVID to, as I say on previous podcasts, we can't wait for COVID to fuck off, frankly, and all go out and have a big old party again. And hopefully, maybe it's a Helter Skelter.
You do owe you a beer. Chapel.
I do owe you a beer. I'll buy you more than one. No worries.
At a chapel.
That sounds like a plan to me, mate.
All right, mate. Take care.
Top
Cheers,
man.
Tom. Thank you very much, mate.
You're welcome, mate. That is Simon Scorpio, DJ Scorpio here on Raw, the 90s Rave Podcast with me, Tom Latcham.
Are you ready for the sound of DJ Scorpio?
Well, we hope you've enjoyed the latest episode of Raw. We've certainly enjoyed making it and bringing it to you, and we want to make more. But to do so, we are going to need some of your help, I'm afraid. We are just normal people with normal jobs. This is a hobby and not a very well paid one at that. In fact, it's not paid at all. We've invested quite a bit of our money to keep this show going, but we could really use some of your help as well. Any donation, big or small. We know it's a difficult time for you all out there. It's a difficult time for all of us. But any donation you can give, whatever size, will help us to go towards improving our kit. It will help us get on the road, pay expenses to go and interview some of your 90s rave favourites, and also just keep bringing you some more banging 90s rave content. If you do feel able to help, that'd be great. If you don't, we do understand, but if you can, head over to gofundme.com/the 90s rave podcast. That address, I'll repeat just one more time, gofundme.com/the 90s rave podcast. And if you can't give any money or you want to join our community, why don't you head over to Twitter? Why don't you head over to Instagram? Why don't you head over to YouTube? And why don't you head over to Facebook? Search Raw, the 90s Rave Podcast. Like us, subscribe to us, do all that. Get involved. So now it's time for a big shout out to some of our most generous donators and helpers. A big shout out to Chad O'Carroll, who knew that the 90s rave scene was big in North Korea. Oi oi to you, mate. A big shout as well to Wayne Clark, who gave some money via our gofundme.com/the 90s rave podcast URL. He knows how difficult it is to keep funding all this kit, and he's given us a fantastic donation. Thank you very much, Wayne. Big ups to you. And Malcolm Payne, ongoing funder from the US of A. We're glad you're enjoying it, mate. Keep listening. There's loads more to come. where that came from. And also, I do want to give a big shout out to the Gabba crew, who hopefully have enjoyed this episode. That's Ollie Thumper, Tom Evans, and my man Ollie Wheeler. Oi, oi, boys. Oi, oi.